tax measures is China taking to address the crisis? And how will the crisis affect China's Belt and Road Initiative? Welcome to this 15th episode of IBFD's Tax Take series of short videos on the global tax implications of the COVID-19 crisis. This one will be focusing on what this means for taxation in China and the implications for this Belt and Road Initiative. I'm honored to have with me today Mr. Suhua Huang, speaking from his office, where he is Deputy Director General in the International Tax Department of the Chinese State Tax Administration. He is not involved just in domestic tax affairs, but he's also, for example, Vice Chair of the OECD's Working Party number 10 on exchange of information and tax compliance. And to add to that, he's also supervising the daily operations of the BRITACOM initiative. More on that later. Let's get started, Suhua. We know that China was the first country to be hit by the health crisis. How did China respond in terms of taxation measures to address the economic impact?
Thank you, Barry, for having me in this interview. There have been 7 batches of 28 incentive, tax policies, being put in place in China. So I'm just going to introduce some of them to showcase what has been done by the Chinese tax authority to tackle the challenges posed by COVID-19 in its effort to support taxpayers, ensure business continuity, and limit the economic effects of containment measures, and help the country to be more resilient to face crisis in these difficult times. First of all, there are a number of measures to enhance taxpayer cash flow. As you know, VAT is China's biggest revenue generator and brought about 39% of total revenue of the country last year. So in this important tax, a 3-month holiday is granted to small business in the region most hit by COVID-19, as they are particularly vulnerable to external disasters, while reduced burden is accorded to small business in other regions, which means the collection rate for VAT is reduced from 3% to 1%. So in the corporate income tax, which is called enterprise income tax in China, there's enhanced the generosity of loss forward provisions for hard-hit business, transportation, catering, accommodation, and tourism. They are now entitled to a loss carry forward for 8 years instead of the usual 5. And in the social security contributions, employers' shares are absolutely waived in the epicenter of the epidemic.
These relief measures were aimed at SMEs and large businesses.
Yeah, especially aimed at SMEs and small business, but for the most hard hit regions, right? So all the business of different sizes must be granted the same treatment. And also let me continue to support the health system, right? Like in many other countries, additionally, alongside the bonus paid to the frontline medical workers and health professionals, are not subject to personal income tax. Besides, key supply business, wishing to make additional investment on equipment to raise, production capacity is entitled to immediate 100% expensing for that investment with no cap, on the unit value, because usually there's a cap on the unit value of the equipment, which is 5 million RMB, approximately 710,000 US dollars. But in this special period of time, there's no cap on the investment. You can claim immediate 100% expensing for the investment on that particular equipment or machine.
I mentioned at the beginning that you had a specific responsibility for the daily operation of the BRITACOM operation. BRITACOM is the tax cooperation mechanism that supports this Belt and Road Initiative. But can you perhaps just, in a few words, because I know it's very complicated, give us a little insight into the Belt and Road Initiative, and then what BRITACOM is doing or can be doing to assist the countries that are involved in that Belt and Road Initiative to combat the crisis?
Yes, Barry, thank you for raising this topic, which is a very interesting topic. I feel always I can speak a lot about this topic, right? As you mentioned, the BRITACOM stands for the Belt and Road Initiative Tax Administration Cooperation Mechanism. Actually, it's a kind of international organization in the making, because they have to go through a lot of internal procedures, right, to gain endorsement from government. So we're still in the process of doing that. So it's a kind of official mechanism.
I think the planned end date is something like 2049, if I'm right. So there are a lot of years to go, and it started in around 2015.
Yes, it started this Belt and Road initiative. And actually, this is a kind of a Belt and Road or route, or something like this. It originated in the very ancient times, something like ancient in the dynasties in China. So it's called Belt and Road. Actually, it originated from the Silk Road. The Silk Road
Silk Road.
Yeah,
yes.
Because in ancient times, silk was one of the very popular commodities which were used for export. That's why it's called the Silk Road. So generally speaking, the Chinese government has signed and cemented agreements with about 129 or 30 countries, right, government, for commonly develop
And are those countries mainly located in Southeast Asia or across the world?
I think it's mainly, developing countries, covering all the continents. But the majority of the membership are developing countries from Africa, Southeast Asia, some are from the America as well. And in order to support the BRI, countries, tax development, that's why we have the idea of BRITACOM, which stands for the Belt and Road Initiative Tax Administration Cooperation Mechanism. So it is a non-profit official mechanism for tax administration among the jurisdictions that subscribe to the Belt and Road Initiative. And with its secretariat based in Beijing, it now consists of 36 tax administrations as its members and 28 tax administrations and international organizations as its observers. So the general vision of BRICOM is to facilitate trade and investment, foster economic growth of the BRI jurisdictions, and contribute to the fulfillment of the inclusive and sustainable development as set out in the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Right, so tax plays a very key role in the Belt and Road Initiative as a whole. Now, that was before COVID-19 struck. How can this BRITACOM, this cooperation mechanism between tax administrations, help or deal with the crisis? Is it something or is the solution to let each country solve its own problems? What can BRITACOM do?
Yes, this is a very good point, right, Barry. I thank you very much for raising this point. So actually, we have been conducting the business of BRITACOM on a very smooth, route. But suddenly, due to the unfortunate event of this pandemic, everything has been shifted online. For instance, on June the 2nd, the BRITACOM Secretariat successfully hosted a conference entitled Responding to COVID-19, BRITACOM Perspective. So where representatives from 36 countries and regions, 7 international organizations introduced and exchanged views on how to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic, maintain work streams, and resume business operations.
So it's clear BRITACOM is can play and is playing a vital role in assisting countries that are associated with the initiative to come out of the crisis. If we look at the impact of the crisis, the economic impact on businesses, and in the context of Belt and Road Initiative, we know that that is very much something related to international, global supply chains, and we know that global supply chains have been severely disrupted by the crisis, and that pattern has also repeated itself within China. To what extent can a tax authority help businesses cope with that disruption? What's China doing?
I think many countries have been done a lot, right? It's including tax authorities on how to help the business resume their normal operation, So and the Chinese tax authority is no exception. I think because China has a huge number of taxpayers, especially we have a special invoice, for VAT, administration. This is very unique in China. So every VAT payer must have to use this kind of invoices in their daily operation. So with back home, we have a large in-house amount of test data in terms of VAT invoice data. So we have leverage this amount of data to help the taxpayers to resume to regain or to reconnect the supply chain. Particular example, if you don't mind, okay. So a company might be confronted with the sudden cut of supply of raw materials. So in this kind of difficult time, thanks to data analytics, the regional tax administration, where a particular strain the company is based, could use the VAT invoice data to locate some new suppliers for that particular strain company. So,
right. Well, I think that's that is. I mean, that's an excellent example. It's interesting because we know that technology is playing a major role in assisting businesses and tax administrations in combating the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. But we see here that big data, effectively, the data that you gather from the VAT invoices, is also playing a role in assisting businesses from solving commercial problems like disrupted supply chains. So I think that's fascinating to hear. If we look to the future, because we've looked so far at what's been happening, if we look to the future, we know that many countries are discussing what they should do to assist businesses recover from the crisis, but at the same time ensure that government revenues are not excessively depleted as they have been. France is looking at tax cuts of around 20 billion over the next 2 years in that context. Is there any writing on the wall? Is there any indication at the moment as to what China is likely to do? Are they likely to increase taxes to recover some of the lost revenue, or precisely the opposite, reduce taxes more generally to help businesses recover?
I think there's nothing confirmed yet, but personally I feel that there are two sides on the same coin, right? On the one side, the Chinese government has been doing a lot trying to alleviate the burdens of taxpayers. Last year in 2019, they're about 2.3 trillion RMB, right? Which is about $330 billion have been relieved.
330 billion US dollars of tax.
330 billion. US dollars have been relieved, have been cut for taxpayers.
Right.
So the burden cut, right, burden relief has been an ongoing process, because the current Chinese government has been laying very much emphasis on sustainably trying to improve the doing business environment in China, because we want to attract foreign FDI and so on. We want to keep the money here in China, right? We have to constantly improve the environment for taxpayers. But as you rightly mentioned, on the other side of the same coin, right? So the government is losing money, is losing revenues. So what can we do? There's one thing we can definitely do, is that I feel that we have targeted on those tax fraud. More efforts will be made, definitely made to improve taxpayers' compliance with the law, with the regulations, because we feel there's a serious problem with the tax fraud. For tax fraud, the tax authority in China is very serious about tax fraud. And for the general, mediocre, issues, right? Generally speaking, we still, want to focus our attention on how to improve the doing business environment from tax point of view, trying to serve the taxpayers wholeheartedly. But for tax fraud, we should issue we use the iron hand, right, on tax fraud. Right. And then if you just punish severely the tax fraud, on the other hand, you're gaining the money for the government, right? This is one of the revenue source for the future for China, I think.
Yes. Clear. I mean, the more effective you are in terms of stopping fraud, tax fraud, the less you need to look at increasing tax rates. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, we've come to the end of our very short video, where we've tried to give viewers an insight into what's going on in China, what's going on in terms of the wider picture on the Belt and Road Initiative. There's obviously a lot that's going to happen in the future. Maybe we have to sort of have another video at some stage in the future. But at this stage, I would thank you, Suhua, Huang, for your insights and openness in terms of describing what's going on. Thank you once again. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. And if you want to see any more of the videos on COVID-19, please check out the IBFD's web pages. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry, for having me. Thank you.
It's a
So
pleasure.
remain safe and healthy in this difficult time. Bye.